Assalamu alaikum everyone. क्या हाल है आप लोगों के? Walaikum assalam. Walaikum assalam. What is the plan for... I'm lagging? Really? Assalamu alaikum. Acha. If I am, I think the problem is at your end. Khair. So, क्या चल रहा है? 22 days left. Sir, guesses होते हैं मैथ्स के? नहीं बेटा, I don't do guess paper. Guess paper is like betting. लग गया तो वाह वाह, नहीं लगा तो पता नहीं क्या करेंगे आप लोग. खैर, I understand, but just make sure that you channelize this stress into doing something productive. ठीक है, ये नहीं कि बस बैठे कंप्लेन कर रहे हैं कि बहुत स्ट्रेस है. Channelize it and get something productive out of it. Okay. Sir, important question. Will you be when will you be streaming a 4024? इरादा है मेरा इंशाल्लाह. So since exams are closed, I will inshallah be streaming on a regular basis. What is the expected threshold for P1? Sir Zain said 85. It's good to aim for 85 and above. I'm not saying that's the expected threshold, but what I would say is that if you want to be safe, if you want to like guarantee yourself a good grade, then aim for 85 and above. ठीक है, 85 वो ठीक कह रहे हैं. 85 अगर आपका आ जाता है तो threshold is not going to make a difference. I haven't even studied some topics. चलें खैर, anyway. So let's start. Now this is a topic. Now when I announced this stream, a lot of you reached out asking, okay, is this even part of the syllabus? Well, let me tell you, this is obviously part of the syllabus. Okay, and it's part of both. It's part of O-levels as well as IGCSE. Now I will say this, that linear quadratic has always been part of the syllabus. Exponential B, rational B, ये सब part of syllabus रहे हमेशा. Cubic is something that has been added recently with a lot of detail. Okay, so earlier the questions were pretty basic, like you were maybe given multiple graphs and all you had to do was look at the graph and identify which one is which. But I have, by the way, also uploaded past papers, past paper questions. I would like you guys to download them. You'll find a link in the description. And once we're done with the stream, I'll upload the notes as well. Okay, so aaj hum inshallah karenge, we're going to do these three. Why only these three? Because quadratic is going to take a lot of time, because with quadratic, we have to learn completing square as well. Okay, so if you guys know completing square already, that's great, but obviously I'm not going to assume that you know it already. So we're going to learn completing square inshallah from scratch. Okay. Now, and जो आप लोग asymptotes की आप लोग ने रट लगाई हुई है, वो है basically exponential or rational में. ठीक है. Now, don't lose your mind over it. I've said this multiple times. In this, you have asymptotes, but इसका hardly 1 mark का सवाल होगा. We will do it, but it's one of those topics like symmetry where it doesn't carry a lot of marks, and so that's why it's not worth that you lose your mind over it and you go crazy just because you don't know just one small concept. Okay. Now before I start, I would really appreciate if you guys like the stream and also subscribe to the channel in case you haven't done that. This stream is going to be an hour and 30 minutes at least. So let's start with linear. Okay. Linear is very easy, so let's just get out of the way, and we do this in coordinate geometry anyway. So linear mein there's not a lot to know. So we know that a straight line can be of 4 types. Okay. A straight line can be of 4 types. So when you draw a straight line, we know very well that it can be of 4 types. So here's the x-axis, here's the y-axis. It can be upward sloping. Now what is it that we can tell about an upward sloping line? We can tell for sure what the gradient is going to be, in the sense not the value, but in the sense what is the sign going to be, whether it's going to be positive or whether it's going to be negative. So that means when you have an upward sloping line, the gradient is going to be positive. Okay. Now also what we can tell just by looking at the line, whether the y-intercept is going to be positive or not. So if you have an upward sloping line that looks like this, you can clearly see that the y-intercept is going to be positive. However, if you have an upward sloping line that looks like this, you can clearly see that the gradient is going to be negative. Okay, so that's what we're expected to do, and without actual values, we can't find out the gradient, we can't find out the y-intercept, but we can at least identify whether it's going to be positive or negative. And how do you decide, how do you know that this is an upward sloping line? So the rule is this: as you move towards the positive y-axis, okay, so as you walk towards the positive y-axis, what happens to the line? The line is going up. So as the line is moving away from the y-axis, it's rising. Therefore, this line will have a positive gradient. Okay, so that's, like I said, that's all you're expected to know. And you will notice how questions like these are actually very easy. There's not a lot of depth in them. Okay, now let's talk about another kind of straight line. अच्छा, सारी लाइन स्ट्रेट होती हैं, ठीक है. अक्सर मैं सवाल पूछता हूँ कि what kind of a line is this going to be, तो मैं साथ साथ ये भी बोलता हूँ कि ये मत बोलना कि straight होंगी, because these are all straight lines. Okay, a straight line is not just a horizontal line, and it's not just a vertical line. It's basically any line that you draw is a straight line. Now, a downward sloping line will also have equation that looks like this. The only difference is that its gradient is going to be negative. And how is this a downward sloping line? So as you move towards the horizontal axis, or towards the positive x-axis, you can see that the line is falling. Line niche ko aa rahi hai. That means this will have a negative gradient. That's all we can tell. And y-intercept also, we can tell that it's going to be positive if it's above the x-axis. Now, the third and the fourth line are horizontal and vertical. ठीक है, और आपको इसकी equation भी पता होनी चाहिए. So, if you have a horizontal line, so this is what it looks like first of all. This is x, this is y. So, this is what a horizontal line looks like. Now, what does the equation of a horizontal line looks like? If it's cutting the y-axis at c, that means it's going to be y equals to c. So, for example, let's say ये line y-axis को cut कर रही होती 3 पे, तो इसकी equation क्या होती? Y equals to 3. Let's say if this line was cutting the y-axis at 2, so its equation would be y equals to 2. If let's say this line was cutting the y-axis at 0.5, so its equation would be y equals to 0.5. Okay, so this is the standard equation of a horizontal line. Now let's do the fourth and the final case. The fourth and the final case is where the line is vertical. ठीक है, अब vertical line की equation कैसी दिखती है ये भी आपको पता होना चाहिए. So this is what the equation of a vertical line looks like. Here it is. So suppose that it's cutting the x-axis at b, that means its equation is going to be x equals to b. So for example, if a vertical line is cutting the x-axis at 2, its equation will be x equals to 2. If it's cutting the vertical axis at x equals to 1, if it's cutting the horizontal x-axis at x equals to 1, its equation will be x equals to 1. Okay? Now that's all there is as far as linear straight line is concerned. Okay? Acha, ab, the most time that we're going to spend today, inshallah, will be on quadratic. ठीक है, quadratic पे हम सबसे ज़्यादा time लगाएंगे. Okay? अच्छा, first let's get friendly with a quadratic curve. Okay? Let's understand what are all the things that we need to know when it comes to a quadratic curve. PDF is not opening. Can someone check? Is it the same issue with everyone? कोई check करके बता सकता है? कि PDF क्या वाकई नहीं खोल रहा? अगर नहीं खोल रहा तो I'll do something about it. If it's passing through 0, then it's going to be y equals to 0. Okay, if it's a vertical line that's passing through 0, it's going to be y equals to 0. If it's a horizontal line, then it's going to be x equals to 0. Which is why, by the way, the equation of y-axis is actually y equals to 0. The equation of the x-axis, the equation of the x-axis is y is equals to 0. The equation of the y-axis is x equals to 0. Okay? Achha, I think there's a PDF in the description. आप लोग उसमें से देख सकते हैं. Achha. In that PDF, you'll find past paper questions that I've compiled. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to learn how to sketch a quadratic curve. Achha, what does a quadratic equation look like? This is what it looks like. This is the form that I think we have seen the most. Okay? Just like there's a general form of a straight line, this is the general form of a quadratic equation. ठीक है, ये quadratic equation की general form है. Now, there is another form which is ax minus h the whole thing square plus k. इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? इसको हम बोलते हैं completed square form. Now I've made plenty of videos on this, but we will learn this inshallah in today's class as well. This is called completed square form. ठीक है? अब like I said, let's get familiar. Let's familiarize ourselves with a quadratic curve. So quadratic curve आपने math में शायद इतना ना आपने interact किया हो quadratic curve से, but this is what it looks like. अब एक लाइन बनानी तो बहुत आसान होती है. 2 points लिए, you join the 2 points with the help of a straight line, that's it, you have a straight line. But when you have to make a curve, like for example, if you talk about graphs of functions, if you have to make a curve, you don't just need 2 points, you need a variety of points. Okay, so the question is, what are the key points that we need if we wish to make a quadratic curve? Okay, if I wish to make a quadratic curve, what are all the important points that I need to know so that I can join them and make a quadratic curve? Okay. अब एक quadratic curve या तो ऐसा होगा या ऐसा होगा. It's either going to be a happy face or it's going to be a sad face. Okay, now it's not like we will decide what we want. हमारा दिल करा happy बनाने का हमने happy बना दिया, हमारा दिल करा sad बनाने का तो हमने sad बना दिया. ऐसा नहीं होगा. ठीक है, ये हमारे mood पे नहीं depend करता. ये depend करता है curve के mood पे. Okay, either the curve is happy or it's sad. अच्छा, now these are terms that we use just for ourselves. Okay, we don't write these terms in the exam. These are terms that we use for ourselves. Now let's study these points. This point is the y-intercept. Just like a straight line, unless it's a vertical straight line, will have a y-intercept. So this curve will always have a y-intercept. Now, as far as x-intercepts are concerned, maybe there's an x-intercept, maybe there isn't. Maybe there are 2, maybe there's only 1, maybe there are no x-intercepts. Okay, so we'll talk about that also. So here you can see x1 and x2, these are your x-intercepts. Okay, and perhaps the most important, who can tell me what's the most important point when drawing a quadratic curve? The point, just सारे पैसे जिस बात के हैं, that is the turning point. Okay, so the most important point, the point that will carry the most marks, is the turning point. अच्छा, अब turning points के coordinates को हम ज़रा special treat करते हैं. That's why they get special names. We call them h comma k. Okay, so h is the x coordinate of the turning point, k is the y coordinate of the turning point. ठीक है? अच्छा, इस curve को हम क्या बोलते हैं? We call this curve a minimum curve. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is called a minimum curve, which is why k is what? K is basically the minimum value of the curve. ठीक है, k क्या हो गया? K हो गई curve की minimum या least value. Minimum or least value. Therefore, this is a minimum curve. Okay? Acha. Then let's talk about this sad face. Let's see what is the deal with this curve. So here also you can see that we have a y-intercept. Okay, so we have ourselves a y-intercept. Here it is. You can see that we have 2 x-intercepts, x1 and x2. And you can see that there is a turning point. Okay, now as far as this turning point is concerned, because turning point is perhaps the most special thing about a quadratic curve, that's why हम उसको ज़रा special treat करते हैं. ठीक है, उसको एक उसके coordinates को अलग नाम देते हैं. h is the x coordinate of the turning point and k is the y coordinate of the turning point. ठीक है? Okay, now, अच्छा अभी किसी ने सवाल पूछा है कि can we do these with differentiation? You can do it to check your answer, but the question will build up in a way that it will ask you to first bring it in completed square form and then find out the turning point. Okay, so you can't skip the completed square form. Okay, but if the question is silent, if it's just asking you to sketch it, then do it however you like. Achha, अब the question is, achha, also by the way, what's this? This is the maximum value. If you look at k, you can see that the curve is not going beyond this. Therefore, this is considered the maximum value. And because this is the maximum value, this curve is called a maximum curve. Okay, this curve is called a maximum curve. Okay? Acha. Now, sketching a cubic curve is not part of IGCSE only, it's part of both. It's part of O-levels as well as IGCSE. I'll show you guys कि अभी the specimen paper, I'm not sure if it's the specimen paper, but recently, I think it's the practice paper in which they have tested cubic curve. So here you can see this is 4024. 4024 is for O-levels, and there was a question where you were supposed to draw a cubic curve. Okay, I don't know if I have it here with me, but long story short, it's part of the syllabus. Okay, don't think it's not part of the syllabus. It is part of the syllabus. पता नहीं मेरे पास है नहीं है. बहरहाल, it's part of the syllabus. It's part of O-levels as well as IGCSE. Okay, so now, so इससे क्या पता चला? इससे हमें पता चला that we need three things in order to make a quadratic curve. Okay, so what do we need in order to make a quadratic curve? We need three things. Number one, we need to know what the nature is. अच्छा, nature से क्या मुराद है? Nature से मुराद है whether it's a minimum curve or whether it's a maximum curve. ठीक है, अब how are we going to figure this out? We're going to talk about that in detail now. And number two, we need the turning point. Okay, so in order to make a quadratic curve, we need the turning point. And number three, we need the intercepts. Okay, now as far as intercepts are concerned, you need the x-intercepts and you need the y-intercepts. Okay, now y-intercept will always be there, x-intercept may or may not be there. We'll find out how to figure it out. अच्छा, अब बात करते हैं. So ये क्या है हमारे? ये हमारे ingredients हैं. Okay, so these are what you need to sketch a quadratic curve. Okay, now compare this with a straight line. In straight line, 2 points are enough, but in a quadratic curve, you need three things: nature, turning point, and intercepts. Okay, now let's talk about nature. Okay, let's figure out कि nature कैसे पता चलता है. पता कैसे चलेगा that a curve is a minimum curve or a maximum curve? So what's the general form of a quadratic equation? This is what it looks like. It looks like y is equals to ax square plus bx plus c. This is the, like I said, this is the general form of a quadratic equation. अच्छा, अब एक काम करते हैं. अब आप एक काम ही करें. आप ये देखें. So let's say we have, I'm just going to randomly type a quadratic equation. X square minus 5x, यहाँ चलो minus 6x कर लेते हैं, plus 8. Okay, so this is a quadratic curve. Now, Abhi, what's the coefficient of x square? The coefficient of x square is equal to 1, meaning it's positive. Okay, now notice if I change the coefficient of x squared to 2, it's still happy. If I change the coefficient of x squared to 3, y equals to 3x squared, it's still happy. Now it doesn't matter what the coefficient of x squared is, as long as it's positive. अब मैं इसको 30 क्यों ना कर लूँ, मैं इसको 3 million क्यों ना कर लूँ, it's always going to be a happy face. And notice what happens the second I change the coefficient of x squared to minus. Okay, so the second I change the coefficient of x squared to minus, what happens? It becomes a sad face. Okay, so long story short, इसको generalize करते हैं. ये है a, which is the coefficient of x squared. If it's positive, notice that it's a happy face. But the second that it becomes negative, notice what happens? The second that it becomes negative, it becomes a sad face. ठीक है, इससे हमने क्या सीखा? इससे हमने ये सीखा that if the coefficient of x squared, which is a, if it's positive, it's happy. If it's negative, it's sad. Simple as that. Okay? No, it doesn't determine the minimum or the maximum point. It determines the nature. Okay? So how do you determine the nature? Very simple. Two rules. If a is greater than 0, which is the coefficient of x square, okay, so a, which is the coefficient of x square, is greater than 0, in that case, it's going to be a minimum curve, meaning it's going to look like this. Or, if a is less than 0, in that case, it's going to be a maximum curve, which looks like this. Oops, not like that. This is what it looks like. ठीक है, और याद रखो, where a is the coefficient of x squared, because sometimes examiner can play games with you, might use the coefficient of x squared as p and maybe use the coefficient of x as a. So you're just looking for the coefficient of x squared, wo a ho, b ho, c ho, d ho, usse fark nahi padna chahiye. You're just looking for the coefficient of x squared. Okay, now, so finding out nature is a piece of cake, but सारे पैसे हैं इस चीज़ के. Turning point. Turning point निकालना is where we're going to be spending the most time. Okay? Acha. Why? Because here's what we do. We take the quadratic equation from the general form, okay, and then we bring it in completed square form. क्या करते हैं हम इसको? हम इसको completed square form में लेकर आते हैं. ठीक है? Meaning from this form, y is equals to ax square plus bx plus c, to this form, which is y is equals to a x minus h, the whole thing square plus k. Okay? Acha, this sign stays as it is. Okay? So this minus sign is part of the formula, you can say. ठीक है, आपने इस minus sign को as it is रखना है. If let's say h is negative, then what happens is minus minus will become positive, but we'll see when that happens. ठीक है, but just remember that this minus sign will remain as is, but if after that there comes a negative value, then minus minus will become positive. Okay? Achha, why do we bring it in this form? Notice something similar. Notice that we have h comma k. Okay? Reason why we bring it in this form is because when you bring it in this form, you get the coordinates of the turning point. Okay? When you bring it in this form, you get the coordinates of the turning point. And what are the coordinates of the turning point? They are h comma k. ठीक है, अब मैं आपको इसकी एक ट्रिक बता देता हूँ. The y coordinate remains as it is. For the x coordinate, change the sign in the bracket. So for example, if this is minus 2, x minus 2, तो वो plus 2 हो जाएगा. If it's x plus 2, तो minus 2 हो जाएगा. We'll see when we come across a question. Abhi I'll just write it down so that you can make sense of it later on. Okay, so just remember this, that for h, we change the sign. K remains as it is. Okay, now if you can't make sense of this right now, nothing to worry about. When, like I said, when we get to a question, you guys will, inshallah, be able to make sense. Okay? Okay, so, ab iske, any AdMath students here? Say yes. If there are any AdMath students, just say yes. है कोई AdMath student? Now, अब इसके, अच्छा अब देखें, अब जो AdMath students हैं ना, AdMath students आप लोगों ने completed square form सीख लो, ठीक है? Even if you've done comparing, why? Because I'm sure if you haven't used completed square form in quadratics, you must have used completed square form in equation of circle. Okay, so don't think that this is not for you. You also need to learn this. Let's do a few examples. Okay, now we're going to change the course and we're going to learn how to bring a quadratic equation, in completed. अच्छा, इसको कोई completing square form भी बोलते हैं, completed square form भी बोलते हैं, nothing to worry about. Okay. You can download my notes directly from the website www.mathletebysart.com. Achha, I'm expecting you guys to know all this. A plus b, the whole thing square, is equals to a square plus 2ab plus b square. And a minus b, the whole thing square, is equals to a square minus 2ab plus b square. Okay? Now, what I'll do is, I'll do a few expansions and I want you guys to identify a pattern. Okay, x plus 2 the whole thing square, we know very well that this is going to be x square plus 4x. Achha, last wali term, I know it's going to be 4, but I'm going to write it as 2 square. Okay? Because I want you guys to identify a pattern. if let's say we have x minus 3 the whole thing square, that means this is going to be x square minus 6x, and the last term is going to be 3 square. If let's say you're doing x plus 1 the whole thing square, so that means this is going to be x square plus 2x plus 1 square. Okay, let's do one more. I want you guys to identify a pattern. X square minus 8x plus 4 square. Okay, so here's a question for you guys. What is the relationship between the middle term and the term that we're squaring? Or in short, what's the relationship between the coefficient of x and the term that we're squaring towards the end and we're adding? बताएं, इन दोनों में कुछ पैटर्न दिख रहा है आप लोगों को? Simple words में उस पैटर्न को explain करें. What's the relationship between the coefficient of x and the number that we're squaring towards the end? Common? Half of it. Exactly. Not common, it's half of it. Okay? If you focus on the number that we're squaring towards the end, it's always half the coefficient of x. If you look at the number that we're squaring, it's always half the coefficient of x. If you look at the number that we're squaring, always half the coefficient of x. And the same pattern continues. Okay? The same pattern continues. So, अब एक काम करते हैं. Let's learn how to bring it in completed square form. Let's say we have x square plus 10x plus 3, and we're supposed to bring it in completed square form. ठीक है, now this is not in completed square form right now, we're supposed to bring it in completed square form. ठीक है, अब इसके steps देख लें. If you don't get it after the first example, please don't panic. There are plenty of examples that I have planned for you guys, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is, so this is the first step. That you write x square, you write 10x, you leave a bit of space, and then you write plus 3. Okay? अच्छा, अब आप एक काम ये करें, this is step 1. Now here's step 2. Step 2 is, this is what step 2 is. That you make a bracket with a square, and then you put a minus with a bracket and a square. ठीक है, अच्छा, why are we doing this? ये भी समझ लो. Why are we doing this? And by the way, this is y is equal to. Okay, y is equal to, y is equal to, y is equal to. मैथ का रूल क्या है? मैथ का रूल ये है कि अगर आप इक्वल्स टू के लेफ्ट हैंड साइड पे एक चीज़ करते हैं तो आपने इक्वल्स टू के राइट हैंड साइड पे एक ही चीज़ वही चीज़ करनी है. मतलब अगर इफ़ यू डू मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 2 यू डिवाइड बाय 2 एज वेल. ठीक है, दैट्स द रूल ऑफ मैथ. आई एम श्योर यू गाइज आर अवेयर ऑफ इट. अच्छा, देन देयर इज समथिंग एल्स ऑल्सो. व्हाट दैट इज के इफ इट्स ऑन द सेम साइड ऑफ द इक्वल्स टू साइन, then if for example you're adding something, okay, if you're adding something, then you better subtract it as well. Okay, why? Because if you don't do that, if you add something and you don't subtract it, what happens? You've changed the entire equation. Okay, so what's the rule of math? The rule of math is that if you add something, you have to subtract it as well so that balance is maintained. Achha, up here's the thing. What is it that we should add here in order to bring this in completed square form? ठीक है, पैटर्न को स्टडी करते हैं. पैटर्न के मुताबिक एंड में जो चीज़ ऐड होती है वो हमेशा कोफिशिएंट ऑफ x का हाफ होता है. स्क्वायर होता है, ऑब्वियसली देयर इज अ स्क्वायर, बट इट्स ऑलवेज हाफ द कोफिशिएंट ऑफ x. मीनिंग व्हाट शुड आई ऐड? आई शुड ऐड 5 square. And if I'm adding 5 square, what should I subtract? I should subtract 5 square as well. Now what happens is that this part of the expression will compress and become x minus 5, the whole thing square. Okay, and what happens here? Let's work this out. This is 3 minus 25. Okay, so 3 minus 25. What's 3 minus 25? That's equal to minus 22. So minus 22. Okay. Now, if I compare this with y is equals to ax minus h, the whole thing square plus k, तो अब हम क्या कर सकते हैं? अब हम बता सकते हैं what are the coordinates of the turning point. Okay, what we can do now is we can now compare it and clearly identify x plus, yeah, sorry, not minus, x plus, my bad. Now we can compare and identify what are the coordinates of the turning point. ठीक है? अब how do we identify the coordinates of the turning point? Compare करते हैं. Notice that minus h is equals to 5. That means the x coordinate of the turning point is equal to minus 5. Now remember the rule that I wrote over here, that अगर आपको h चाहिए, which is the x coordinate of the turning point, change the sign. If you want the y coordinate, it remains as it is. Okay? So minus 5 comma negative 22. So when we're finding out the x coordinate of the turning point, we change the sign. You can see that it's minus 5. And when you want the y coordinate of the turning point, that remains as it is. अच्छा, अब इसके पीछे लॉजिक क्या है? इसके पीछे लॉजिक क्या है? वो आई थिंक आई मेड अ वीडियो ऑन इट एज वेल. वो मैं अभी नहीं समझा रहा. ठीक है, वो मैं अभी नहीं समझा रहा. लेट्स डू अनदर एग्जांपल. Sir, 5 square should, what's that? 5 square minus 5 square? Yeah, it will be 0. Okay, but obviously if I cancel it and make it 0, then what will happen is that we'll be back to square 1. So beta, use your common sense. Okay, we're writing it in a certain form so that we can bring it in a incompleted square form. Okay, so yes, 5 square minus 5 square will be 0. I'm pretty sure that's not news for anyone here. But what we're doing is we're bringing it in completed square form, which is why we're doing what we're doing. Okay. Now, so this was step 3. Okay, so step 3 was that you bring it in completed square form, and then you can see what are the coordinates of the turning point. Achha. Now let's do another example. This was example 1. Ek aur example karte hain. If you haven't understood this, nothing to worry about. Like I said, I'm going to do plenty of examples, so no worries. So let's say we have x squared plus 6x plus 8. Dekho, there is a formula with the help of which you can find out the turning point as well. There is a formula, I agree, it's x equals to minus b upon 2a. But आपके syllabus में bringing something in completed square form is part of the syllabus. Okay, so you should know exactly how to bring it in completed square form. I don't think you will get marks if you use the formula because that formula is beyond the scope of your syllabus. Okay, so I'm aware of the formula, आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं, but I'm afraid if you use the formula, you may not get full marks. Okay, it's something that I have my doubts over, which is why I'm not gonna teach it to you guys. Okay, so let's bring this in completed square form. And by the way, if you think about this, this is actually, if you practice this, this is actually a lot less work for compared to using a formula. Now, y is equals to, let's bring this in completed square form. X squared plus 6x, leave a bit of space and then write plus 8. अच्छा, उसके बाद हमने क्या करना है? We need to add the square of something, and whatever it is that we add, we need to subtract it as well. So what do I add? Who will decide that? That will be decided by the coefficient of x. What's the coefficient of x? It's 6. What's half of 6? 3. So that means I will add the square of 3 and I will subtract the square of 3. So what happens? This part of the expression will now compress. Okay, will now compress and become x plus 3 the whole thing square. And what happens here? Let's see. This is 8 minus 9, which is equal to minus 1. That's it. I can guarantee that if you practice this, this will take you a lot less time compared to using the formula. Acha, we're not doing minus 3 whole squared. We're subtracting the square of 3. Okay, हम ये नहीं कर रहे कि हम minus 3 whole square कर रहे हैं. No, we're subtracting the square of 3. Okay, so make a note of that. Now, what are the coordinates of the turning point? The coordinates of the turning point are minus 3, minus 1. Remember, for x coordinate of the turning point, you change the sign. Okay, so change sign. For the y coordinate of the turning point, you take it as is. So let's do another example. Let's say you have y is equals to x squared minus 2x plus 4. Okay, y equals to x squared minus 2x plus 4. Now, what do I do now? Exactly the same thing. First step, you write x squared minus 2x, leave a bit of space, and then write plus 4. Now, what you have to do is, you will add the square of something, and you will subtract the square of the exact same thing. Now, what should I add in order to bring this in completed square form? Who will decide that? The coefficient of x will decide that. So, the coefficient of x is the boss here. Why? I'll explain. Because coefficient of x, ek aur cheez decide karta hai. You guys will find that out here. So, what's the coefficient of x? That's 2. What's half of 2? That's 1. So, that means you add the square of 1, you subtract the square of 1. Now, what will this part of the expression compress into? Remember, I said that the coefficient of x is boss because the coefficient of x decides two things. Number one, what needs to be added? And number two, what sign are we going to use when we're writing whole square? Okay, so what's the sign that we're going to use? We're going to use the minus sign. Why minus sign? Because the coefficient of x is minus. Why is that? यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हैं that whenever the coefficient of x is negative, the sign in between is negative as well. So x minus 1 the whole thing square plus 4 minus 1, what's that equal to? That's equal to 3. So what are the coordinates of the turning point? The coordinates of the turning point are 1, 3. Okay? अच्छा इसकी दो examples और करते हैं, especially when it's minus. अच्छा, here you can see that we changed the sign for x and we let the y coordinate be as it is. Okay, now let's say you have y is equals to minus x square plus 6x plus, या minus कर लेते हैं चलो, minus 1. Okay, now let's see what to do next. Sir, if there is an odd, if there is an odd value, then you will write it in decimal or fraction. It's up to you. Okay. I would suggest that you, if it's a terminating decimal, you can write it in terminating decimal. If it's a recurring decimal, it's best that you write it in fraction form. अच्छा, अब यहाँ पे हमने क्या करना है? यहाँ पे be careful. So y is equal to, now notice that there is a minus sign here. So first thing you need to do is you need to make the coefficient of x square equal to 1. So आपने क्या करना है? आपने minus common ले लेना है. लेकिन आपने minus जब common लेना है तो फिर आपने minus common सिर्फ और सिर्फ पहली दो terms में से लेना है. ठीक है? आपने minus common किस में से लेना है? सिर्फ और सिर्फ पहली दो terms में से लेना है. So it's going to be x square minus 6x. Okay, close the bracket. Let the minus 1 be as it is. Achha. So this is step 1. What's step 1? Step 1 is make the coefficient of x square equal to 1. ठीक है? अच्छा. अब क्या करें? Pay attention. So this minus sign is not going anywhere. Inside the bracket, we have x square minus 6x. We're going to leave a bit of space and then we're going to close the bracket and then we write minus 1. Okay, now the rule is that we're going to add the square of something, and not just that, we will also subtract the square of the same thing inside the bracket. Okay, we're going to add the square of something and we're going to subtract the square of the same thing inside the bracket only. Achha, ab what do we add? Who will decide that? Remember, who's boss? The coefficient of x is boss. So that means the coefficient of x is 6, so that means I will add half of square of the coefficient of x. Now if I've added that, that means I need to subtract the same thing as well. अच्छा, अब क्या होगा? अब ये होगा. This part of the expression will become x minus 3 the whole thing square. This becomes minus 9. Do not forget कि बाहर एक minus weight कर रहा है. Okay, do not forget that there is a minus weighting here. And don't forget this minus 1 as well. Okay. So what happens next is that this becomes minus x minus 3 the whole thing square. Minus 1 into minus 9 becomes plus 9. Don't forget the minus 1 remains as it is. And also do keep in mind that this minus gets multiplied by this bracket, and we don't literally multiply it by the terms inside, we just write it next to it. ठीक है, ये अंदर वाली term से multiply नहीं होगा because ये bracket है और square है. And minus 1 will get multiplied by 9, which makes it plus 1. And then you have the minus 1 from before. So what does this become? This becomes minus. Now whether you write minus or whether you write minus 1 square does not make a difference. This is what we end up with. ठीक है, अच्छा 2 के साथ क्या करना है मैं वो भी बता देता हूँ. What if the coefficient of x square is something else? I will explain that also. Okay. Now, what are the coordinates of the turning point? The coordinates of the turning point are 3, 8. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that what kind of curve is this? Since this is the coefficient of x square is minus, since there's a minus sign outside, that means it's a maximum curve. Although you're not supposed to, this is not what we're learning right now, but just so you know, this is a maximum curve. Achha. So by the way, this was step 2, this was step 3, and this was step 4. Now let's do another example. Okay, I'll do another example with the minus sign. So in case you haven't fully understood it, you can follow this example. So this is part E. So y is equals to minus x square minus 2x plus 3, for example. Achha dekho, dividing the whole equation by minus is not something I would recommend because it will make it complicated. I don't suggest that you divide the whole equation by minus because फिर आगे जाके आपको हो सकता है problem हो, ठीक है? अच्छा, अब आप एक काम ही करें. Here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that you take minus common from the first two terms. Okay, so if you take minus common from the first two terms, this is what you have. The plus 3 remains as it is. Okay? Now, step 1, that was step 1, that you take the coefficient of x square equal to 1 by taking minus common. Now comes step 2. Step 2 is कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं, हम इसको ready कर रहे हैं completing square में लाने के लिए. Okay, so we've left a bit of space. Now we know that we're going to add the square of something and we're also going to subtract the square of the same thing. Now, what is it that we are going to add? We're going to add half of 2. That means we're going to add 1. And what is it that we're going to subtract? We're going to subtract 1 as well. ठीक है, अब ये क्या बन जाएगा? ये बन जाएगा x plus 1, the whole thing square. This minus 1 comes down as it is. Do not forget कि बाहर एक माइनस आपका वेट कर रहा है और दूसरी साइड पे 3 आपका वेट कर रहा है. Now what happens? Y is equals to minus x plus 1 the whole thing square plus 1 plus 3. Why plus 1? Because ये दोनों से multiply होता है. And then we have y is equals to minus x plus 1 the whole thing square plus 4. And what are the coordinates of the turning point? The coordinates of the turning point are minus 1 comma 4. Okay? Now, अच्छा अब देखो, yes you can use the formula. ठीक है, बहुत देर से आप एक ही बात बोल रहे हैं. You can use the formula, but I am afraid that this formula may not be part of your syllabus because it's not something that we learn formally. So which is why I would prefer that you stick to this. ठीक है ना, I'll give a quick summary of it. So first of all, you make the coefficient of x squared 1. So if there's a minus, you take a minus common. Okay, and we're only taking minus common from the first two terms, not from this 3. Okay. So when you take minus common, these two terms become positive, x squared plus 2x. अब हमने क्या करना है, अब आप इस 3 को थोड़ी देर के लिए बाहर ही छोड़ दें. ठीक है, no, you will not subtract 3 from outside the bracket. No, you're not going to do that. Okay, everything will happen inside the bracket. So you add depending on what the coefficient of x is, so that means you add the square of 1, and once you've added something, now it's your responsibility to subtract it as well. Achha, अब this part of the expression becomes x plus 1 the whole thing square, okay, and then this remains as it is. अब ये minus multiply होगा इससे और ये minus multiply होगा minus 1 से. So minus into minus 1 becomes plus 1 और इस bracket के साथ minus sign आ गया. And then don't forget this plus 3, so when you simplify this, this is what you get. ठीक है? अच्छा, somebody earlier said, what if the coefficient of x squared is not 1? Now, I haven't seen such questions. Let me take you to some past paper questions. I haven't seen such questions, but वो भी हम कर लेंगे. कोई टेंशन की बात नहीं है, वो भी हम कर लेंगे. अच्छा, अब here's a question. Let's see what this is. So h is not plus 1 since we multiplied by minus. देखो, we never multiply the terms inside the bracket by minus. ठीक है? अगर मिसाल के तौर पे ईमान, अगर आपके पास ये है कि minus 2 into x plus 1 the whole thing square, तो आप आप ये तो नहीं करोगे ना कि minus 2 को x से भी multiply कर दिया, minus 2 को 1 से भी multiply कर दिया. What you will do is, you will first expand and then multiply. ठीक है, तो ये बेवकूफ़ी नहीं करना कि इस minus को इससे multiply कर लिया. इसके around brackets हैं और squares हैं. ठीक है, so minus will not be multiplied by the term inside the bracket which has a square also. Okay, now let's go to some questions. Okay, let's solve a few questions. You will notice that the questions are actually very easy. They're not difficult at all. Okay, अच्छा, मैं ज़रा double check कर लूँ कि आप लोगों के पास भी PDF. अच्छा, PDF है ना आप लोगों के पास? You guys have confirmed. ठीक है, so great. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, the question says write it in the form. अब देखो, sometimes the question will give you a different form, as in the questions will use some other letter, so don't get confused. It's the same thing. ठीक है, ये completed square form है. अब इसको completed square form में कैसे करना है? x square plus 10x लिखा, थोड़ा space छोड़ा, 14 लिख दिया. ठीक है, अब यहाँ पे हमने कुछ ऐड करना है और यहाँ पे हमने किसी का स्क्वायर सब्ट्रैक्ट करना है. अब कौन डिसाइड करेगा? वो coefficient of x decide करेगा. What's the coefficient of x? It's 10. What will be half of 10? That's 5 here and 5 here. Now what happens? This becomes x plus 5 the whole thing square This is 14 minus 25. What's 14 minus 25? That's equal to 11. So minus 11. Okay. So x plus 5, the whole thing square, minus 11. ठीक हो गया? Easy. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Now, on the axis, sketch the graph y is equals to x square plus 10x plus 14, indicating the coordinates of the turning point. अब देखो हमें क्या show करना है? हमें सिर्फ और सिर्फ coordinates of the turning point show करना है. We are only supposed to show the coordinates of the turning point. Now, what are the coordinates of the turning point? The coordinates of the turning point are minus 5, minus 11. Okay, what are the coordinates of the turning point? Minus 5, minus 11. ठीक है. अब वैसे तो इस कर्व का x इंटरसेप्ट भी होगा, इस कर्व का y इंटरसेप्ट भी होगा. ठीक है. लेकिन सवाल ने क्या बोला है? सवाल ने बोला है कि सिर्फ शो करो कोऑर्डिनेट्स ऑफ द टर्निंग पॉइंट. तो आपने क्या करना है? आपने कोऑर्डिनेट्स ऑफ द टर्निंग पॉइंट ही शो करना है. आपने ज़्यादा ओवर एफिशिएंट नहीं होना कि चलो मैं x इंटरसेप्ट भी निकाल लेता हूँ, मैं y इंटरसेप्ट भी निकाल लेता हूँ. नहीं, यू जस्ट नीड टू शो द कोऑर्डिनेट्स ऑफ द टर्निंग पॉइंट एंड दैट्स इट. सारे मार्क्स आपको उसी चीज़ के मिलेंगे. ठीक है. So what are the coordinates of the turning point? Minus 5, negative 11. So it's a sketch. So that means minus 5 इधर कहीं होगा, minus 11 इधर कहीं होगा. ठीक है. और ये बन गया आपका quadratic curve. That's it. ठीक है. अच्छा, एक चीज़ का ख्याल रखना. I want you guys to take care of one thing, and that is if you look at the y-intercept, what's the y-intercept? Okay, you can see the y-intercept here. It's 14. So just make sure that when you're drawing a curve, तो आपका y-intercept, at least आपका curve positive y-axis को cut करे. ठीक है? Just make sure of that. That's it. और ज़्यादा आपने details में नहीं जाना. There will be instances where the examiner will require more details, but at least not in this case. ठीक है? There will be instances where the examiner will require more details, but not in this case. Okay? All right. Now, let's do another example. अच्छा, यहाँ पे कर्व स्केचिंग नहीं है, तो कर्व स्केचिंग जो नहीं है उसको ज़रा थोड़ी देर के लिए होल्ड करते हैं. कर्व स्केचिंग वाली एग्जांपल करते हैं. Yeah, let's do this example. Okay, we'll do another example as well, but right now we're only focusing on curve sketching example. So the question says, write x square minus 8x plus 10 in this completed square form. So let's write this in completed square form. So we have x square minus 8x. Let's leave a bit of space and then we write plus 10. Okay. अच्छा, अब plus 10 हमने थोड़ा दूर करके इसलिए लिखा है so that we can add or subtract something from the coefficient of x. Now what is it that we are going to add? Who will decide that? The coefficient of x will decide that. Okay. So what's the coefficient of x? The coefficient of x is 8. What's half of 8? That's 4. So that means we're going to add the square of 4 and we're going to subtract the square of 4 as well. So this now becomes x minus 4 the whole thing square. अच्छा, अब यहाँ पे क्या होगा? यहाँ पे this is 10 minus 6. And what's 10 minus 6? That's equal to 10 minus 16, sorry. And that's equal to negative 6. So let's write the answer in the answer space. X minus 4 the whole thing square minus 6. That's the answer. ठीक हो गया? अच्छा, अब what's next? Next the question wants, अच्छा, by the way, what are the coordinates of the turning point? The coordinates of the turning point are 4, negative 6. Okay, so it's a sketch, so that means it's not drawn to scale. Here's 4, this is minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, minus 6. So somewhere over here is the turning point. Achha, notice what does the question want? It only wants to label the coordinates of the turning point and the y-intercept. Okay, the question wants just the coordinates of the turning point and the y-intercept. Achha, what's the y-intercept? The y-intercept is 10. ठीक है, अब ये sketch है. ठीक है, sketch का मतलब कि it's not going to be drawn to scale. So we have 2 points through which the curve is going to pass. That's all we need. These are the 2 points through which the curve is going to pass. That's it. ये हमने curve बना दिया. Job done. Okay, no need to worry about the x-intercepts. Yes, there will be x-intercepts, but we don't have to worry about it. Okay, we don't have to worry about the x-intercepts. Okay, let's do another question which might involve sketching. I think sketching के हमने सारे questions कर लिए हैं, but ये सवाल और कर लेते हैं चलें. So x square minus, चलें, I would like you guys to try this. How did I find the y-intercept? Y-intercept हम equation को देख के बता सकते हैं. Y-intercept सीधा सीधा ये होता है, ठीक है? This is what the y-intercept is. It's positive 10. Okay, y-intercept के लिए हम x को 0 रखते हैं. So if you plug in 0 in place of x, that's what you get. Achha, I would like you guys to solve this. This is also from O-level math. It's for May-June 2019. Here it is. Let me read your comments. Sir, my sister in 3rd grade, she says, why doesn't sir teach math? This XYZ. Okay, that's cute. Sir, will you stream add math vectors anytime soon? Beta, vectors पे already इतना content है. मैं कर लूँगा stream inshallah. But there's already plenty of content as well. Will we have to see how to find the quadratic equation from the graph? I was taught to do it. Yeah, we will do that. Abhi, remember I said that we're mainly focusing on completed square form. ठीक है, अभी हमने x intercepts और ये सब छोड़ दिया है. सर ये कौन से न्यू सिलेबस का है? बेटा क्यूबिक ग्राफ्स ओ लेवल मैथ में रिसेंटली ऐड हुआ है, ठीक है, और पहले तो बस ऐसे ही हल्का फुल्का सा था, लेकिन अब प्रॉपर ऐड हो गया. मतलब अब नाउ यू आर सपोज टू स्केच इट. पहले तो आपको बस 4-5 स्केचेस दिए हुए, आपने उसमें से हाँ बता दिया कि भाई ये क्वाड्रेटिक है, ये क्यूबिक है, स्टफ लाइक दैट. बट नाउ थिंग्स हैव गॉटन सीरियस. उन्होंने कहा कि भाई मजाक बहुत हो गया, अब ज़रा सीरियस हो जाते हैं. So x minus 7/2, the whole thing square minus 6.5. All right, let's see if that's the correct answer. So here's what we're going to do. x square minus 7x, 5 को थोड़ा दूर करके लिख देते हैं. अब हम किसी चीज़ का स्क्वायर ऐड करेंगे और किसी चीज़ के स्क्वायर को माइनस भी करेंगे, ठीक है. अब क्या ऐड करेंगे? हम ऐड करेंगे 7 के हाफ का स्क्वायर, दैट मीन्स 3.5 स्क्वायर, और वही चीज़ हम माइनस भी कर देंगे, ठीक है. सो ये कंप्रेस होके क्या बन जाएगा? ये कंप्रेस होके बन जाएगा x माइनस 3.5 द होल थिंग स्क्वायर, ठीक है. और ये कंप्रेस होके क्या बन जाएगा? 3.5 का स्क्वायर होता है 12.25. सो 12.25 माइनस 12.25 इज माइनस 7.25. सो लेट्स राइट दिस इन द आंसर स्पेस. x माइनस 3.5 the whole thing square minus 7.25. ठीक हो गया? अच्छा. Then the question says, write down the minimum value of x square minus 7x plus 5. Okay. अब note करो that the question hasn't asked you to make a sketch. It's asking you to write down the minimum value. Now, minimum value, remember, is what? Minimum value is basically the y coordinate of the turning point. Okay, y coordinate of the turning point. So what's the y coordinate of the turning point? It's minus 7.25. So therefore, the minimum value will be minus 7.25. Okay, nope, not the x value. Minimum value, देखो ना, अभी हमने देखा कि minimum value क्या होती है? Minimum value होती है the y coordinate of the turning point. So what's the y coordinate of the turning point? It's minus 7.25. So here it is. Okay. अच्छा, अब एक काम करते हैं. हमने देख लिया coefficient of x square अगर 1 ना हो तो क्या करें? If the coefficient, how to find out the turning point. Now one thing that we did not address, although I don't think it's needed, but let's do it anyway, and that is intercepts. Okay, so how do we find out the intercepts? So we've learned how to find out the nature, we've learned how to determine whether it's a minimum point or a minimum curve or a maximum curve, we've learned how to find out the turning point. Now let's address nature. Yeah, minimum and maximum value will be the y value only. ठीक है. अच्छा, अब नेचर निकालने के लिए intercepts निकालने के लिए, sorry, remember that there are two intercepts, right? One is the y-intercept. A y-intercept निकालने के लिए, it's not something that you have to plug in, that you have to sit down and do it formally. It's very simple. That अगर आपको किसी भी चीज़ का y-intercept चाहिए, भले वो curve हो, भले वो straight line हो, then what you're going to do is you're going to plug in x equals to 0. Okay, so if you want the y-intercept of any curve, any line, anything that is, just plug in x equals to 0. If you want the x-intercept, okay, what do? You plug in y as 0. Okay, if you want the x-intercept, you plug in y as 0. जैसे मिसाल के तौर पे आपके पास एक इक्वेशन है y is equals to x square minus 8x plus 12. ओके, अच्छा, अब जहाँ तक बात है इसके y-intercept की, okay, y-intercept is a no-brainer. We can see that if I plug in x equals to 0 for y-intercept, what happens? If I plug in x equals to 0 for y-intercept, this becomes 0 squared minus 8 times 0 plus 12. ये आपको करने की भी ज़रूरत नहीं है. Y-intercept is 12. Okay? But if you want the x-intercept, what do you have to do? You have to plug in y as 0. Now, when you plug in y as 0, हम एक dilemma में पड़ जाते हैं. ठीक है? What's the dilemma that we're facing? How do we solve this? Now, there are 3 ways to solve this. Okay, it's a quadratic equation. There are 3 ways to solve this. ठीक है? अब इसको कैसे solve करना है ये मैं आपके ऊपर छोड़ देता हूँ. एक है कि हम इसको factorization से solve कर लें, which is middle term breaking. That's the most common. And this is usually what you can expect in paper 1. Okay, so if it's factorization, you can expect this in paper 1. By paper 1, I mean the non-calculator paper. Okay, so factorization, you can expect this to be in non-calculator. If factorization doesn't work, what's the one thing that's always going to work? Quadratic formula. Quadratic formula will always work. Okay, and all in all, these two are perhaps the most common. Achha, there's a third method also. Who can tell me the third method? There is a third method as well. ये मत बोलना calculator. ठीक है? Yes, calculator is a method, but there is a third method as well. What's that? Who can tell me? Completing square. Very good. So, wow, you guys are smarter than I thought. Completing square. You can actually use completing square to solve a quadratic equation. ठीक है? Graphical भी legit है, लेकिन it's going to take you forever. Okay, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get accurate answers, but completing square is actually a legit way of solving the question. Okay? Okay, now, let's do some more questions and see what's what. So when differentiation trick stream. अच्छा, कल तो नहीं, परसों इंशाल्लाह I am doing a stream very soon. अच्छा, this is a question. It's from IGCSE paper 4, meaning you can use a calculator, but I would strictly advise you not to. So I thought you were okay, I was just joking. Khair. So let's work this out. I would like you guys to in fact solve part A. ठीक है, part A भी solve करें, and when you're done with part A, let me know, we'll solve part 2 together. Threshold will be 90 plus. I don't think the threshold will be 90 plus, but see, nobody can predict the threshold. What I can tell you is a safe range. Safe range would be 85 plus. Second stream inshallah this Saturday. इसका जो second stream है जिसमें मैं asymptotes और exponential और rational graphs को cover करूँगा, वो inshallah Saturday को होगी. $60 plus, बेटा let's be realistic. 60 plus तो नहीं होने वाला threshold. I mean 60 plus तो होगा वैसे actually, but 90 भी 60 प्लस होता है वैसे तो. Will you do a stream revision of whole syllabus? I plan on doing so, but that'll be like very close to the exam. Okay, so looks like we have an answer. Let's see if it is x plus 4 the whole thing square minus 25. Let's see if that's correct. So x square likha plus 8x likha, बीच में थोड़ा space छोड़ा, फिर minus 9 लिखा. अच्छा, अब हम क्या करेंगे? We're gonna add the square of something and we're gonna subtract the square of the exact same thing. So we're gonna add 4 square, we're gonna subtract 4 square. This part of the expression becomes x plus 4 the whole thing square. This becomes minus 9 minus 16, which is minus 25. So x plus 4 the whole thing square minus 25. ठीक हो गया? Use your answer to part A, part 1 to solve the equation. Now, because we have to use our answer, what's our answer? Here it is. X plus 4 the whole thing square minus 25. Now, instead of equating this to 0, we know that this same equation can be written like this. Now, we're going to equate this to 0. Okay? So, if I equate this to 0, what do you get? You get x plus 4 the whole thing square equals to 25. Now, what happens? You take the square root on both sides. When you take the square root on both sides, what happens? You have x plus 4. अच्छा बताना इसमें गलत क्या है? X plus 4 equals to 5. That means x is equals to 1. Is that correct? You can solve it by comparing as well. I talked about this in the beginning of the stream. I'm sure you're an AdMath student. So, but it's 2 marks के लिए it's going to take a lot of time. Yes. What's wrong here is that when you take the square root on both sides, you have to take plus minus 5. Okay, so plus minus 5, which means one solution you will get by solving x plus 4 equals to 5. Okay, so I'll do it over here. Okay, तो अब यहाँ पे आपके पास 2 solutions expected हैं. एक आएगा x plus 4 equals to 5 को solve करके, which will give you x equals to 1. और दूसरा आएगा x plus 4 equals to minus 5 को solve करके, which will give you x equals to minus 9. So x equals to minus 9, that's the answer. Okay. Now, what's the logic behind this? Really, what's the logic behind this? If x square is equals to 9, how many numbers can you square and get the result to be 9? बताओ ऐसे कितने numbers हैं जिनको square करें तो answer 9 आएगा? ऐसा एक number है? नहीं, ऐसे 2 numbers हैं. एक है -3 को square करोगे तब भी 9 आएगा. Okay, and the other is 3 squared. 3 squared is also equal to 9. So that is why when you take the square root on both sides, when you take the square root yourself, that is why you get a plus 3 and a minus 3. That's the logic behind it. Okay, अब ये ज़रा एक मुख्तलिफ सा सवाल आ गया. पहले आप लोग इसको खुद attempt करें. ठीक है, I'll give you guys a few minutes. Tell me what the answer is and then I'll solve it. Similarity पे एक video आ जाएगी inshallah very soon. Okay, I've made it and I will post it very soon. उसके बाद फिर एक past papers का run through भी कर लेंगे. Did I like math in my school years? Not until grade 7. Yeah, not until grade 8 actually. Grade 7 tak to I hated math. And I was horrible at math. I don't know if अगर आप लोगों ने movie देखी है तारे ज़मीन पे अगर आपने देखा है ना तो I was that kid in math up until grade 7. B equals to 7. Okay, let's find out if it is in fact equal to 7. What made you turn into in grade 8 I had a very good teacher and she just changed my whole perspective on the subject. That's why. Okay, so teacher का बहुत बड़ा role होता है and that is basically what happened. Okay. Yeah, that was me. That was me up until grade 7. Okay. So what's the answer? क्या आंसर है आप लोगों का? अच्छा, जिन लोगों ने सॉल्व किया है वो बताएं कि कैसे सॉल्व किया. Those who have solved it, tell me how you've done it. So while you guys are answering that question, I'll explain this. So basically, look at the number of marks. It's a 3-mark question. Now we know what the quadratic formula is. It's minus b plus minus square root of b square minus 4ac, the whole thing upon 2a. Okay? Simultaneous. ठीक है, simultaneous, okay. But b की value तो हमारे पास immediately आ जाएगी. Why? Because after using the quadratic formula, this is what they've ended up with. They've ended up with minus 7 plus minus square root of 61 divided by 2. That means that minus b is equals to minus 7. Okay, so if minus b is equals to minus 7, that means b is equals to 7. ठीक है, अब हम क्या करें? हम कंपेयर कर रहे हैं. फॉर्मूला लगाते तो ऐसा लगता, वैल्यूज़ के साथ ऐसा लग रहा है. ठीक है, अच्छा, अब दूसरी चीज़ मैं इसको कलर कोड कर रहा हूँ so that it's easy for you guys to keep track. Now b square minus 4ac, what's inside the square root is equal to what's inside the square root. That means b square minus 4ac is equals to 61. Now here's the thing. We know that b is equals to 7, and we also can see that the coefficient of x square, which is a, is equal to 1. So that means b square, which is 7, so 7 squared minus 4 into 1 into c is equals to 61. So that means 49 minus 4c is equals to 61. So minus 4c is equals to 20, which means c is equals to, oh, wait a minute, I think I've made an error. 61 minus 49, sorry, that's not 20, that's equal to 12. No, wait a minute, let me check. So 61 minus 49, that's equal to 12. Yeah. So minus 4c is equals to 12, which means c is equals to minus 3. So minus 3 is the value of c, 7 is the value of b. What chapter is this? This is quadratics. Beta, this is quadratics. और कौन सा chapter होना है इसमें? Okay, now, अब I think it's safe to start cubic. अच्छा, ज़रा थोड़े कुछ और questions कर लेते हैं. Let's do some more questions, and then we'll see what's what. The diagram shows the sketch of the curve so-and-so. Find the coordinates of the points A, B, and C. Okay, so we have to find out the points of A, B, and C. अब देखो, what's A and B? A and B are your x-intercepts, okay? So if A and B are your x-intercepts, that means you can find out the x-intercepts by simply equating this to 0. Now you will solve this with the help of middle term breaking. X squared plus 4x minus 4 is equals to 0. That means x into x plus 4 minus 1 into x minus 4 equals to 0. Okay? So that means x plus 4 into x minus 1 equals to 0. That means the coordinates of x, the x-intercepts are minus 4 or x-intercept is 1. अब what will be the x-intercept of B and what will be the x-intercept of A? अब हम कैसे डिसाइड करें कि भाई B को क्या x-intercept दें और A को क्या दें? उसके लिए हम इस्तेमाल करेंगे, कोई फॉर्मूला नहीं है, कोई ट्रिक नहीं है, सिर्फ और सिर्फ दिमाग इस्तेमाल करना है. ठीक है, सिर्फ और सिर्फ आपने लॉजिक यूज़ करनी है. दैट्स इट. ठीक है, ये मत पूछना कि इसकी कोई ट्रिक है, इसका कोई फॉर्मूला है, कोई फॉर्मूला नहीं है. कुछ चीज़ें सिर्फ रिलाई कर रही होती हैं आपके कॉमन सेंस पे. देयर इज़ नो फॉर्मूला फॉर इट. नाउ B is seemingly has a positive x-intercept, A seemingly has a negative x-intercept. So that means A के coordinates होंगे minus 4, 0, B के coordinates होंगे 1, 0. That's it. Keep it simple. Now, as far as C is concerned, C is the y-intercept. So for C, what we're going to do is, we're going to plug in x equals to 0. So y is equals to 0 plus 0 minus 4. That means y is equals to minus 4. So x-intercept is 0, y-intercept is minus 4. ठीक है. अच्छा, ये आप इक्वेशन को डायरेक्टली देख के भी बता सकते हैं. आई नो बहुत सारे स्मार्ट लोग अब मुझे बोलेंगे कि ये करने की ज़रूरत है, हम डायरेक्ट इक्वेशन को देख के बता लें. तो भाई अगर आप हैं इतने स्मार्ट एंड इफ यू फीलिंग दैट कॉन्फिडेंट, गो हेड, लुक एट द इक्वेशन डायरेक्टली एंड सी दैट द एक्स एंड वाई इंटरसेप्ट इज इंडीड इक्वल टू -4. अच्छा, ये डिफ्रेंशिएट ये सिर्फ IGCSE में, ये मैं अभी नहीं कर रहा. ठीक है, this is not part of O levels. All right, let's do this. Let's solve this. These are past paper questions which I have put together. Okay, so I didn't invent these questions. These are past paper questions which you can download. You'll find a link to it in the description. Now factorize 24 plus 5x minus x square. So क्या करना है आपने इसको factorize करना है. अच्छा, कैसे करेंगे आप इसको factorize? Factorize का मतलब middle term breaking. So 24 x square के coefficient और 24 को multiply करें, that's equal to minus 24. ठीक है. Now we're looking for two numbers that multiply and make minus 24 and the sum is equals to positive. Okay. So that means 8 into minus 3 should do the job because 8 minus 3 is 5 and 8 into minus 3 is negative 24. So 24 plus 8x minus 3x minus x square. Okay. Let's take 8 common. So we'll have 3 plus x. Let's take minus x common. So we have 3 plus x. So what do we get? We get 8 minus x and 3 plus x. Okay, so 8 minus x and 3 plus x. There you go. Now we're supposed to find out the values of A, B, and C. Now immediately let's find out the value of C because C is the y-intercept. We can clearly see from the equation that the y-intercept is 24. So let's write this as 24. Sorry, not A, C is 24. Okay. Next is A and B. Now this question is very kind क्योंकि उसने हमसे पहले factorize करा लिया और अब x intercepts निकालने को बोल रहा है. So now how will you find out the x intercepts? Replace y with 0, 8 minus x equals to 0 or 3 plus x equals to 0 which means x equals to 8 or x equals to minus 3. Now once again use your common sense. B will have the positive value which means B is 8. A will have the negative value which means minus 3. You're not supposed to write down the coordinates. You're only supposed to write down the values. अच्छा, अब एक सवाल और करते हैं. एक सवाल था ओ लेवल का. हाँ, ये लेट्स सॉल्व दिस क्वेश्चन. क्यूबिक भी कर लेंगे. क्यूबिक में ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लगेगा. विल डू क्यूबिक राइट आफ्टर दिस क्वेश्चन इंशाल्लाह. ओके. So I want to solve this question and after that we're doing cubic, okay? So important सवाल sir, 4 marks a question है. Without doing this last step, simply identify it from the equation which you get still. बेटा if it's a 4 mark question that means ज़ाहिर है वो बाकी 3 marks आपको एग्ज़ाम सेंटर तशरीफ़ लाने के तो नहीं देगा ना. बाकी 3 marks आपको working के देगा. So if it's a 4 mark question, use your common sense. You don't have to ask me or any math teacher, just use your common sense. The diagram shows the sketch of a graph y is equals to x square plus ax plus b. Now, find the values of a and the values of b. So, notice that we have two unknowns in this equation, y equals to x square plus ax plus b. Okay. And now what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to find out a and b. अब हमें क्या चाहिए? हमें चाहिए हैं points. Okay. Notice that other than x and y, there are two unknowns. Okay. Other than x and y को अगर ignore कर दें थोड़ी देर के लिए, so there are two unknowns, a and b. Now, do we have enough information to form two equations? Let's see. We have two x intercepts. That means एक point जिससे ये curve pass कर रहा है is minus 3, 0. And the other point through which the curve is passing, that is 2, 0. Okay? Now, let's plug in these points and form two equations. So if I plug in 3, 0, so y की जगह आ गया 0. Then we have minus 3 squared minus 3a plus b. Let's write this nicely. So 9 minus 3a plus b equals to 0, which means 3a plus b को इधर ही रखते हैं. 9 को मान ले जाते हैं. So minus 3a plus b is equals to minus 9. ये क्या आ गई हमारे पास? ये हमारे पास एक equation आ गई. Okay, what do we have? We have one equation. Okay, now let's plug in 2. So if I plug in 2, 0, that means in place of y that's 0. So 2 square plus 2a plus b. Let's write this nicely. 2a plus b is equals to minus 4. And this right here is your second equation. Okay, now let's solve these two simultaneously. It's a paper 2 question. Paper 2 में अगर simultaneous आएगा तो हो सकता है इतने ज़्यादा marks का ना हो. Paper 1 में आएगा, so that means it will definitely carry more than 2 marks for sure. अच्छा, how do I solve these two simultaneously? Let's use elimination. Okay, so let's write 2a plus b equals to minus 4 under the first equation, and upon subtracting the 2, we get the job done. We get b to be eliminated. So minus 3a minus 2a, that's equal to minus 5. ठीक हो गया. b और b eliminate हो गया. Minus 9 minus 4 becomes minus 9 plus 4, which is minus 5. So that means we have the value of a, which is equal to 1. Okay. Now let's use this value of a, plug it in here. So 2 times 1 plus b is equals to negative 4. That means b is equals to minus 4 minus 2, which is minus 6. Easy peasy. ठीक हो गया. Let's check the answer. A is equals to 1, b equals to minus 6. Yep, that's correct. Couldn't we have done x minus 3 into x minus 2 equals to 0? That's a good idea. We could have done that also. ठीक है, चलो मैं इसका alternate method भी बता देता हूँ. I will teach you an alternative method as well. Okay, so here's an alternative method. The alternative method is, and thank you for pointing that out, जिसने भी वो point out किया. I totally didn't realize that. Now, if you look at the x-intercepts are minus 3, or the other x-intercept is 2. That means when you were solving this quadratic equation, okay, when we were solving this quadratic equation, इससे पहले का step क्या होगा? इससे पहले का step होगा x plus 3 into x minus 2 is equals to 0. Okay, so before we solve this quadratic equation, this must be the step before. Again, we're going in the opposite direction. We're looking at the x-intercepts, and now we're finding out the equation. Now we can expand. So we have x square minus 2x plus 3x minus 6. Okay, so we have x square plus x minus 6. This is what the equation is. Now let's compare this y is equals to with y equals to x square plus ax plus b. So a की वैल्यू आ गई हमारे पास 1 और b की वैल्यू आ गई हमारे पास minus 6. ठीक है? So that was smart. So you guys are smarter than I thought, which is good. अच्छा, ये वाले क्वेश्चंस हम करेंगे एंड में जब हम क्यूबिक भी कर लेंगे. ठीक है? अच्छा, अब एक काम करते हैं. Now let's focus on cubic. ठीक है? Now, cubic is actually, now you would think, I think any normal student would think कि cubic जो है वो quadratic से difficult है. Past papers 2019 तक काफ़ी हैं. बेटा देखो, कोई golden number नहीं है, ठीक है, कोई रूहानी number नहीं है कि अगर आपने इतना कर लिया तो बस काफ़ी है. ठीक है? It's all about how confident are you feeling. If after solving 10 years of past papers आप अभी भी आपके 50 नंबर से ऊपर नहीं आ रहे तो क्या फ़ायदा, आपने टाइम पैसे सब ज़ाया कर दिया ना. लेकिन अगर 2-3 साल के पेपर सॉल्व करके you're feeling confident, you're able to maintain a decent score and you are consistently getting good marks, so that means that's enough. ठीक है? So कोई magic number नहीं है. It's all about what your score is and whether or not you're able to complete the paper in time. Simple as that. Will there be a part 3? Yes, बिल्कुल होगा. AS Math का part 3 है. ठीक है? उसका भी part 3 होगा. Don't worry. Okay, now let's focus on cubic. ठीक है? अच्छा, अब cubic में thankfully, so as I was saying, कि you would think that cubic is difficult, but cubic is not difficult. Cubic is actually much easier. What do you mean IGCSE? Sir, please answer it. Okay, if I'm only able to do my variants on coming exam 5 years, some O-level students by the exam I will try just in case. Yeah, ठीक है, that's fine. Do the other variants, treat the other variants as supplementary practice material. So a cubic equation looks like this. ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. ठीक है? Now this is the general form, but this is the expanded form. General form, but this is the expanded form. ठीक है? अभी इसको हम factorize भी करेंगे. अब क्यूबिक कर्व जो है वो कैसा हो सकता है, ये देख लें. A cubic curve can be of three types. Now you can have something like this. Okay, cubic curve का एक x intercept होगा. Here you can see that it has one x intercept. ठीक है. और अच्छा ठहरो, मैं इसको ना ज़रा थोड़ा squeeze करके बना लूँ, otherwise I'll run out of space. Just a minute. So a cubic curve, as I was saying, can be something like this, where you have one x-intercept okay. It's possible that you have one x-intercept or two x-intercepts also. So how is it possible to have two x-intercepts in a cubic curve? Think about it. Okay, how is it possible to have two x-intercepts in a cubic curve? Question for you guys. ये हाँ, ये add math है, which is now part of math also. This is add math, which is now part of math as well. ठीक है, और ये इसका question practice paper में mentioned है, so don't think that मैं ऐसे by the way पढ़ा रहा हूँ. This is actually part of the syllabus now. So this is how a cubic curve can have two x-intercepts. ठीक है, here's x1, here's x2. And how is it that a cubic curve can have three x-intercepts? So 3x intercepts, this is what it looks like. ठीक है, मैं अभी आपको दिखाता हूँ कि जो प्रैक्टिस पेपर्स कैम्ब्रिज ने दिए हैं फॉर द न्यू सिलेबस, उसमें ये क्वेश्चन आया है. ठीक है, देख लें आप लोग. सो बिकॉज आई रिसेंटली सॉल्व दिस पेपर इन द पास्ट पेपर सेशन. सो दिस इज, सो नोटिस दिस, जिनको डाउट है, ये है कैम्ब्रिज का, कैम्ब्रिज ओ लेवल. क्या लिखा है? कैम्ब्रिज ओ लेवल प्रैक्टिस पेपर फॉर एग्जामिनेशन फ्रॉम 2025. ओके, सो पेपर 2 प्रैक्टिस पेपर फॉर एग्जामिनेशन फ्रॉम 2025, कैम्ब्रिज ओ लेवल. सी द सिलेबस कोड फॉर योरसेल्फ. एंड नाउ यहाँ देखो, कहाँ गया, हियर इट इज. वी हैव अ क्यूबिक कर्व. ठीक है, ये क्वेश्चन भी हम सॉल्व करेंगे, बट यू कैन सी दैट दिस इज अ क्यूबिक कर्व विच इज पार्ट ऑफ ओ लेवल syllabus as well. ठीक है, no, it cannot have more than 3x intercepts. That's not possible. Okay, so more than 3x intercepts is not possible. ठीक है, quadratic curve के जैसे 2x intercepts होते हैं, एक x intercept होता है. ठीक है, more than 2x intercepts are not possible. Where do I get the practice paper? Well, ask your teacher. ठीक है, teachers को access होगा school support hub का, वहाँ पे आपको practice papers मिल जाएंगे. ठीक है, I'll see if I can share them also. So maybe if I can share them, I'll share them as well. Now let's learn how to sketch a cubic curve. So we know that this is what a cubic curve can look like. अच्छा, अब understand this. Equation कैसी होगी? If a cubic curve has one x-intercept, its equation will look like this. X minus p, and then you will have a quadratic expression to follow. ठीक है? And then if you have, and also there will be a coefficient of x cube which I'm writing as k. Now we'll make sense of this, don't worry about it right now. If there are two x intercepts, it's going to be x minus p. If let's say the x intercept is p, अच्छा इसको मैं p और q का नाम दे रहा हूँ. ठीक है, so this is p, this is q. So x minus p into x minus q, the whole thing square. So where it's tangent, there will be a square. If there are three x intercepts, this is what the equation will look like. K into x minus p into x minus q into x minus r, where this is p, this is q, this is r. Okay, now let's answer the very important question, which is how to sketch a cubic curve. Okay, how do you sketch a cubic curve? अच्छा, अब cubic curve के लिए आपको क्या चाहिए होता है? आपको टर्निंग पॉइंट नहीं चाहिए होता. यू वॉन्ट द एक्स इंटरसेप्ट्स. ओके, यू वॉन्ट द एक्स इंटरसेप्ट्स. एंड हाउ डू यू गेट द एक्स इंटरसेप्ट्स? एक्स इंटरसेप्ट्स आपके पास आते हैं बाय इक्वेटिंग y to 0. ठीक है, x intercepts आपके पास आते हैं by equating y to 0, and when you equate y to 0 you solve for x. How do you get the y-intercept? You get the y-intercept by equating x to 0. And then what you do is you solve for y. Okay? Then the third and the most important thing. Okay, not perhaps the most important but also very important. जिस तरह से quadratic curve का nature होता है, cubic curve का भी nature होता है. ठीक है? अच्छा, अब see this for yourself. Let's say we have y is equals to x cube, okay, x cube minus 2x square plus 3x, या एक काम करते हैं, let's make this minus 3x plus 1. Okay, now what does this look like? This is referred to as a maximum minimum curve. Okay, what is this referred to as? This is referred to as a maximum minimum curve. Okay, why is it called a maximum minimum curve? Because if you just look at this part, this looks like a maximum quadratic curve. If you look at this part, this looks like a minimum quadratic curve. Okay, so this is a maximum minimum quadratic cubic curve. If I change the coefficient of x squared, x cubed to minus, तब क्या होगा? ये भी देख लो. Let's say we have something like this. x cube minus 2x square, इसको हम कर देते हैं plus 3x plus 1. अब देखो, what does this look like? This is a minimum maximum curve. Okay, this is a minimum maximum curve. ठीक है? So let's write this down. That was just to demonstrate. Here's what you need to know. So if let's say, here's part 1. If k, which is the coefficient of x cube, is greater than 0, then the curve will be a maximum minimum curve. Okay? And if k is less than 0, then the curve will be a minimum maximum curve. Okay? यहाँ पे ये लिख लो कि k जो है is the coefficient of x cube, where k is the coefficient of x cube. Okay? Now, एक summary देख लेते हैं. एक quadratic curve का अगर एक x intercept है, meaning that you can only find out one x intercept, you cannot factorize the remaining equation. If there are two x intercepts, that means one is a proper x intercept and the other is tangent, and wherever there is tangent, there is a square there. Okay? But if there are three x intercepts, this is what the equation will look like. ठीक है? इसको बेहतर है कि आप memorize कर लें. Okay? I would suggest that you memorize this. Now, let's solve a few questions to see how things work. Now, the questions of cubic are actually very, very easy. They are actually easier than quadratic. ठीक है? Cubic के questions आप note करेंगे, they're actually much easier than quadratic. अब जैसे मिसाल के तौर पे ये, ठीक है? This is a cubic curve. Is there any way, Vida, you can send them to me on WhatsApp. Okay? K is the coefficient of x cube. I mentioned it over here, where k is the coefficient of x cube. ठीक है? अच्छा. Now sketch the graph of y is equals to x plus 1 into 3 minus x into 3 plus x. Okay, now learn how to solve this question. You will understand most of it. अच्छा, first things first. We need to first find out what? We need to first find out the x-intercept. आपने इसी order में जाना है. X, y, and then nature. Now, how will you find out the x-intercepts? In order to find out the x-intercepts, we're going to equate y to 0. So x plus 1 into 3 minus x and into 3 plus x equals to 0. Now, one by one, just like how you do it in quadratic, यहाँ पे भी आपने क्या करना है? One by one, equate every expression to 0 and solve for x. Now, you can do it directly, or you can do it you can do it formally as well. So x plus 1 equals to 0, that means x equals to minus 1. 3 minus x equals to 0, that means x equals to 3. And 3 plus x equals to 0, that means x equals to minus 3. So what do we have? We have the x-intercepts. Okay? We have the x-intercepts. Now, next thing that we have to do is we have to find out the y-intercept. ठीक है? हमने क्या निकालना है? हमने y-intercept निकालना है. अच्छा, y intercept निकालने के लिए क्या करेंगे? Take the equation and simply plug in 0 in place of x. Okay, so if you plug in 0 in place of x, this is 1, 0 plus 1 is 1, 3 minus 0 is 3, 3 plus 0 is 3. अच्छा, कौन spam कर रहा है? Sir MG, वालेकुम सलाम Zain, you can stop spamming now. So y is equals to 9. So we have the y intercept as well. ठीक है, अब let's mark. So 1, 2, 3, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. And what's the y intercept? The y intercept is 9. Remember, this is a sketch. Now, what are the 3 points or 4 points through which the curve is passing? Let's mark that. So one is minus 3 comma 0. The other is minus 1 comma 0. And then finally 3 comma 0. ठीक है? अच्छा, अब the question is कि किस nature का curve बनाना है? Are we supposed to make a minimum maximum curve or are we supposed to make a maximum minimum curve? ठीक है? For that, let's find out the coefficient of x cube. ठीक है? अब coefficient of x cube निकालने के लिए don't make the mistake of expanding the entire thing. Be smart. I'll tell you how you can be smart. So x plus 1 into 3 minus x into 3 plus x. अच्छा, and I'll tell you how you don't really have to find out the nature. You can determine it yourself just by looking at the x-intercepts and the y-intercept. So multiply x with minus x and then multiply minus x with x. So क्या बन जाएगा ये? This is minus x square into x, so that's minus x cube. So the coefficient of x cube is negative. That means it's going to be a minimum maximum curve. Okay, so I repeat, the coefficient of x cube is negative, so that means it's going to be a minimum maximum curve. अब let's go ahead and make ourselves a minimum maximum curve. So, अच्छा, curve sketch करने से पहले, I would suggest that you know, first take a few practice shots. ठीक है, पहले आप कुछ try balls खेल लें, या आपकी कुछ try balls हो गई. अब आप क्या करें? Now go ahead and make the actual curve, and here it is. अच्छा, here's the thing. If let's say that I ask you to make a maximum minimum curve, ठीक है? Let's say मैं आपसे कहूँ कि आप एक maximum minimum curve बनाएं, तो आप एक maximum minimum curve इधर बना ही नहीं सकते. Okay? Even if let's say you want to make a maximum minimum curve, it's not possible to make a maximum minimum curve over here. It's not possible. Okay? So it's not possible to make another curve, because how will you then make sure that the y-intercept is 9? It's not possible. Okay? So that's the answer. Achha, the next part is pretty straightforward. This too, by the way, has been added in O-level math. All you have to do is expand them. Okay? Ab expand karne ke liye, you can be smart. First, let's pick these two brackets. Now, x cube should not be positive. X cube will be negative here. Okay? Why? Because x into minus x is minus x square. Minus x into x is minus x cube. So it's going to be positive. Okay? Or chalo, let's for the sake of argument agree that it's positive, and let's say we have to make a maximum minimum curve. How do you expect to draw a maximum minimum curve which passes through these points? It's not possible. Okay, and if you're thinking कि मैं इसको ऐसे बना लूँ, then it's no more a cubic curve. Okay. All right, so let's expand this. Y is equals to x plus 1. How would you expand 3 minus x and 3 plus x? This can be expanded by using the third identity. So that's going to be 3 square minus x square. So that means y is equals to x plus 1 into 9 minus x square. Now let's expand this. X into 9 is 9x minus x cube plus 9 minus x square. Let's write this nicely. So this becomes, minus x cube. Yeah. So minus x cube minus x square plus 9x plus 9. There you go. 2 easy marks. Okay. Acha, what's that? Sir, do you have any specific paper attempting technique for non-calculative paper, or do you suggest? No, I don't suggest going question by question. It's very simple. First, attempt the easy questions. Okay, easy questions में वो questions आ जाते हैं that don't require a lot of formulas. Questions that require maybe very basic formulas like mean, median, mode. Questions like basic arithmetic, you have to square something, BODMAS, these kind of questions. Okay, so do that first. Then once you're done with those questions, come back, do the next kind of questions. The next kind of questions can be like basic coordinate geometry questions, basically questions that you can solve easily, topics that are your strong topics. And then after that, do the difficult questions. Simple as that. ये नहीं कि बस paper खोला solve करना शुरू कर दिया. That's a horrible approach. Always start with the easy questions, but at the same time, don't get lost looking for the perfect approach. Just start with what you know. Simple as that. Okay? No need to make it overcomplicated. Start with what you know. It's that simple. Okay, now here's another question, also from IGCSE, and also part of O levels. So it says, on the diagram, sketch the graph of y is equals to x plus 1 into x minus 3, the whole thing square. Are there certain apps we should have? Desmos is a good app. Then there is Shapes. Then there is Shapes Drawing. These are must-have apps. Okay. So what kind of a curve can we expect over here? Definitely it's going to be a cubic curve, but what kind? Now notice that we have one x-intercept and two x-intercept. It's a cubic curve. How do I know that it's a cubic curve? Because you can see कि जो x की power है, when you expand, it's going to be x cubed. So that means it's a cubic curve with two x-intercepts. Now let's start with the x-intercepts. अच्छा, अब अगर आप x-intercepts निकालेंगे, that means x plus 1 into x minus 3, the whole thing square equals to 0. So we're finding out x-intercepts, okay? So x plus 1 equals to 0, that means x equals to minus 1. X minus 3, the whole thing square equals to 0, which means x equals to 3. ठीक है? अच्छा, अब x-intercept क्या आ गया? Here's 1, here's minus 1, here's minus 2, and here's minus 3. So one is 3 and the other is minus 1. Okay, now do keep in mind that this is going to be a cubic curve. It's not a quadratic curve, it's a cubic curve. Because you can see कि x की जो maximum power बनेगी वो cube बनेगी. Then let's find out the y-intercept. How do we find out the y-intercept? You will plug in x as 0. Okay, so y-intercept by plugging in x as 0. X-intercept by plugging in y as 0. There will be two x-intercepts. Okay, there will be two x-intercepts. But no need to open it. Why would you open it? Open करके आप उसको दोबारा factorize करेंगे, so you'll just be going in circles. So no need to open it, just solve it directly. जब एक चीज़ already factorized form में है, तो फिर, like for example, if a quadratic equation is already factorized and you're supposed to solve for x, are you going to open it again and then factorize? Of course not. That'll be a total waste of time. So 0 plus 1, that's 1. Into 0 minus 3, that's minus 3, the whole thing square. So y-intercept is equal to what? Y-intercept is equal to 9. So now we have the y-intercept as well. Now what kind of a curve are we going to draw? What kind of a curve are we going to draw? We are going to draw, let's see. So we have y is equals to x plus 1 into x minus 3, the whole thing square. अब इसको जब expand करेंगे तो इसका coefficient x square होगा. Here we have x, so x into x will ultimately give us x cube. That means it's going to be a maximum minimum curve. Okay, it's going to be a maximum minimum curve. ठीक है? अब वैसे अगर आप कोशिश करें कि आप इधर minimum maximum curve बनाएं तो आप वो नहीं बना सकते आप. ठीक है? वो अगर आप बनाएंगे तो फिर आपके x-intercept ज़्यादा हो जाएंगे. Okay, so this step you can say is not absolutely necessary because you can see what kind of curve fits. There's only one kind of curve that fits if the curve is to pass through these 3 points. Now, what will a cubic curve look like that has only two x-intercepts? यहाँ पे क्या होगा? यहाँ पे it's going to be tangent. Okay, at this point, it's going to be tangent to the curve. This is what it's going to be like. ठीक है? So here, it's going to be tangent to the curve. अच्छा, एक और चीज़ नोट करें कि ये टर्न कर रहा है. ठीक है? अब इसको आपने टर्न कैसे कराना है? इसको आपने टर्न कराना है somewhere in between the two x-intercepts. Okay, not exactly ये नहीं कि अब आप कैलकुलेटर निकाल के वर्किंग करना शुरू कर दें. No, somewhere in between the two x-intercepts, meaning somewhere in between minus 1 and 3. So just make sure that it turns after crossing the y-intercept. ठीक है? अगर आप इसको ऐसे बना देंगे, I'm afraid it's going to be wrong. Just make sure that it turns after crossing the y-axis, and there you go. Okay, you're not supposed to find the turning point. Please make sure that you understand exactly what I'm saying. But turn to hoga nahi hai before it comes down. So just make sure that it turns somewhere in between the two x-intercepts. Okay, now let's put this all together and make a nice and smooth quadratic curve. So this is what we get. Okay, so why is it tangent? Because there's a square. That means it will be tangent at x equals to 3. Why isn't it a cubic graph that seems like a quadratic graph? It does. I don't totally understand what you mean by that. आप क्या कहना चाह रहे हैं, मेरी समझ नहीं आया. So should I draw a cubic curve, an actual graph question in one go or in chunks? Iman, it's not a competition. If you want to do it in one go, that's fine. You can do it in chunks also. Just make sure you don't mess it up. Simple as that. Okay. Sir, if in draw an angle questions, if for example degrees of बस एक और दो भी नहीं होना चाहिए, एक से ज़्यादा एक तक ठीक है, एक से ज़्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए. Okay. अच्छा, then you're supposed to expand. So you can expand this very easily. Expand this using the identity, then multiply it by x plus 1. So you have x cube minus 6x square minus plus 9x plus x square minus 6x plus 9. ठीक है, इसको simplify कर लेते हैं. So we have x cube and then we have minus 6x square plus x square, so that's going to be minus 5x square. 9x minus 6x, that's going to be plus 3x plus 9. There you go. That's the answer. Let's double check and see if it's correct. This is question number 7. Yeah, it's correct. अच्छा, एक सवाल और करते हैं और वो है ये वाला. From the practice paper. Okay, and after this we will stop. Okay, now I do encourage you guys to solve the remaining questions. I will upload this PDF and I'll upload the notes as well. So y equals to 9 में direct curve क्यों नहीं? What do you mean y equals to 9 में direct curve क्यों नहीं? I'm not sure what you mean by that, but anyway. So factorize. Factorize means take common. Now we can take x common. So what do we have? We have 2x square minus 3x minus 20. अब आपको लगता है आपको 3 marks इस चीज़ के मिलेंगे? Of course not. Don't expect that you will get 3 marks for this. Why? Because this can be factorized further. Okay, this can definitely be factorized further. So let's factorize it further. Now, let's factorize this further. So that means doing middle term breaking. So what are we looking for? We're looking for factors of minus 40 that leave us with a sum of negative 3. So with a bit of trial and error and with a bit of common sense, you can come up with minus 8 into 5. Why? Because minus 8 plus 5 is equal to minus 3. So minus 8x plus 5x minus 20. Now, I just realized that this is not x square, this is x. So अब इसको further factorize करते हैं. So let's take 2x common. So we have x minus 4. Then let's take 5 common. So once again we have x minus 4. And now we have x into 2x plus 5 into x minus 4. Okay, so this is the factorized version. Let's write it here. X into 2x plus 5 into 2x into x minus 4. Okay. Sketch the graph of y is equals to 2x cubed minus 3x square minus 20. Now notice that the question has already made us do all the hard work. Now all we have to do is just use our hard work and sketch. So now we know that the equation above looks like this. Notice that it's the same equation. Okay. It's wrong factorization. Are you sure about that? Let me check. I've solved this question. X into x minus 4 into 2x plus 5. X into 2x plus 5 into x minus 4. Yep, it's correct. Okay, now, so this is what the equation now looks like. x into 2x plus 5 into x minus 4. Now let's find out the x-intercepts. अच्छा अब ज़रा थोड़ा हिम्मत करते हैं, डायरेक्टली करते हैं, ठीक है. x-intercepts क्या होंगे? एक आपका होगा x equals to 0. The other x-intercept will be found by equating 2x plus 5 to 0, which means x is equals to minus 5 upon 2. The other x-intercept, अच्छा x-intercepts को कभी roots भी बोलते हैं, ठीक है. So if you ever see roots, although I doubt the examiner will use that term, but if you ever see root, don't panic. The roots are basically x-intercepts. Okay, so we have the x-intercepts. Now what's the next step? Next step is y-intercept. Okay, so the first step was, okay, let me be a bit organized. So the first step was x-intercept. Now the second step is y-intercept. Now y-intercept ke liye, you can eyeball what the y-intercept is. Nope, it's not minus 20. Okay, the y-intercept is 0. So y is equals to, देख लें आप, 2 into 0 cubed minus 3 into 0 squared minus 20 into 0. So the y-intercept is 0. Now what about the nature? What kind of curve should we expect? The coefficient of x cube is positive. It's y is equals to 2x cube. So that means since it's positive, the curve is going to be a maximum minimum curve. Maximum minimum curve. Okay, so let's mark the x and y intercepts. One x-intercept is 0. The other x-intercept is 4. The other x-intercept is minus 2.5 or minus 5 upon 2. Okay, now if you think about it, here you can actually draw a minimum maximum curve and you can actually draw a maximum minimum curve as well. ठीक है, यहाँ दोनों बन सकते हैं. But which is why it's important that you find out the coefficient of x cube and you determine the nature as well. ठीक है, so after figuring out the nature, the only possible curve that we can draw is a maximum minimum curve, and there you go. Here it is. That's it. Job done. How many marks? 3 plus 3, 6. 6 easy marks. Acha, I think it's, sir, where it says to find the roots using any equation, so we draw line and just see. Yeah, roots are basically x-intercepts. ठीक है. Roots की term आप लोगों के उसमें, okay, I'm not too sure. मुझे check करना पड़ेगा कि roots की term officially आपके syllabus में है या नहीं. But if it says roots, roots means x-intercepts. Okay, so now let's keep it till here only. We'll pick this up inshallah in the next stream. Next stream में हम asymptotes करेंगे, हम exponential curves करेंगे और हम rational curves करेंगे. Okay, so these are the three concepts that we're going to cover in the next stream. Okay, and I repeat, everything that we have done so far and will do in the next stream applies to both O levels as well as IGCSE. Okay, syllabus says finding roots. ठीक है, so roots are basically x-intercepts. ठीक है, मैं notes में भी add कर देता हूँ ताकि आप लोग confused ना हो जाएं कि x-intercepts को हम roots भी बोलते हैं. यहाँ पे भी मैं लिख देता हूँ. ठीक है, okay, thank you. Alright, so next stream inshallah you can expect this weekend. जाते जाते, if you guys haven't liked the stream, I would appreciate if you do that. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I would dearly appreciate if you do that as well. ठीक है, so that's it. I'll stop here. See you guys inshallah on most likely either on Friday or on Saturday. ठीक है, इसका part 2 आएगा inshallah और फिर उसके बाद I've gotten a lot of demands for trigonometry, so I think once I've done this part 2 I will do trigonometry. Yeah, notes inshallah will be posted. ठीक है, in fact मैं अभी कर देता हूँ, otherwise I will forget. ठीक है, so take care fellas, see you inshallah very soon. Keep studying, keep working hard, keep grinding. So take care.